Hey, welcome back. I'm Dave Dubeau, and today we're going to talk about how to make money in real estate rentals. This is one of the ways a lot of people think about getting involved in real estate investing is buying a property, renting it out, and getting that all magical cash flow, that passive income. That's what we're going to be looking at today. So when it comes to making money with real estate rentals, we're going to be looking at a few different things. First of all, what kind of strategy and market that you're focusing on, the kind of property that you're going to be purchasing, who you're going to be renting out to, and how many properties you need to reach your income goals. So let's dive in. So the first thing we need to take a look at is the kind of property and the kind of market. And typically when we're talking about rental properties, we're talking about either single family homes or multi-family properties. We can also be looking at long-term rentals versus short-term rentals. So let's take a look at that. So when it comes to single family homes, certain markets just make a lot of sense for single family homes, and that is where the price of the actual house is low enough that the rental income cash flows. And these days in North America, those kind of properties in those kind of areas are becoming few and far between. So one of the things that people do quite often is they take a single family home and turn it into a multifamily property by doing a BRRRR, a buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. So you take a single family house, you put in a basement suite in that property, and now instead of just one rental unit, now you've got two rental units. So that's one way to get around that. The other option is to take a look at getting into multifamily properties right from the get-go. Instead of turning a single family home into two rental units, you could buy a duplex that already has two rental units, or a triplex, or a fourplex, or a fiveplex. All of those are small multifamily properties that you can buy using a regular mortgage. Once you get over 5 units, you get 6 units and above, that tends to be what's called commercial residential properties. Multifamily properties, the financing is a little bit different, but it's the same idea. So instead of having just one rental unit under a roof, now you've got multiple rental units under one roof. It helps a lot with efficiencies of scale. Now, these properties tend to be a lot more expensive, but the cash flow tends to be better as well because you've got multiple renters in one place. Now, another thing you need to be looking at is what kind of a rental do you want to have, whether it's a single family home or even multifamily properties. There's the traditional rental, which is where you just rent somebody the property. They bring in their own furniture. They're typically renting it for a year at a time or longer. And that's what most people are used to. So that is a great way to get started. However, some of the challenges with that is depending on the kind of property, it might be hard to make those properties cash flow. It might be hard to have a profit at the end of the month by the time you pay your mortgage and you get your rent for there to be enough difference there to make it worthwhile. So other people, what they do is they furnish the property and they rent it out as short-term rentals. You've probably heard of Airbnb or VRBO. These are short-term rental type platforms where somebody can basically come in and rent your property by the night or by the week. And typically what gets charged for those kind of properties is much, much higher on a daily rate versus a monthly rate. Now, something that's kind of in between because some places are really clamping down on short-term rentals are what are called medium-term rentals. So same idea, you're furnishing the property, but instead of renting it out by the night or by the week, you're renting it out by the month, or typically a 3-month minimum. And that's a way in certain areas to get around that short-term rental restriction and still get an above average return on your investment because again, people are willing to spend a lot more to rent a furnished property. So who rents these kind of things? Well, for example, in larger centers, if you've got medical facilities like hospitals with people coming in short term that need a place to stay, a lot of people would far rather rent a house than stay in a hotel for 3 months. So there's a lot of market for this in different areas. Are you liking this information? If so, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and then on the bell so that you get notified for each new video that comes out. Now, another thing you need to take a look at is the kind of property you're going to be focusing on. So this is going to depend a lot on your budget and how much property management you want to be involved in. So again, if you're renting out a single family home or a townhome or a condominium, you've got one property and one tenant. That tends to simplify things a lot. On the other hand, if you start getting into multifamily properties, yes, you might be getting higher cash flow, but you've got more management hassles to deal with. Instead of dealing with one tenant, now you've got 2 tenants or 5 tenants or 105 tenants, depending on the size of the property. So you really need to take a look at that. Now, the next thing you really need to look at in order to make money with rentals is making sure that you get the right tenants in your property and that you manage those properties properly. So a lot of people think, you know what, I'll just buy a property and get it rented out and Bob's your uncle. I don't have to worry about it. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Chances are you've heard some of those nightmare stories, those landlord nightmare stories, tenants from hell, right? Where they just come in and they thrash the place and they drag things out. They stop paying rent. It takes you forever to get them out. And in certain jurisdictions, tenants have a lot more rights than landlords. So it can be a real hassle to get rid of a tenant from hell, especially if they know the rules and regulations, which quite often they do, and they play those against you. So it's very important, if you're going to be in the rental business, that you learn how to screen tenants. There are tenant screening services out there, but you always want to double check things. You want to make sure that you're checking people's references, you're checking people's work references. If at all possible, you're checking for criminal records, you're checking their credit ratings. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you can tell a lot about a person from their credit rating and their criminal record, right? So make sure, you got to think about this. You have invested your own time and money into purchasing a huge asset. Think about it, a lot of properties, if it was a single family home, chances are that's several $100,000 worth of value there. If you get a tenant who comes in and wrecks that place, I've seen people go bankrupt because of that. I mean, imagine if you rent out your property to a tenant who puts in a marijuana grow op in that property. Well, that tenant has now ruined that property. It's no longer insurable. Your bank is going to pull the financing from it, and now you've got a property that you cannot insure, you cannot get financing on. I've seen people go down the tubes because of that. So you always want to make sure that you do a great job of tenant screening and try to get rid of the problematic prospective tenants right up front. Now, the next thing you want to make sure is that you've got good property management throughout the whole time. So once you get a good tenant in there, you want to make sure that you're checking up on the property from time to time to make sure that it's getting maintained properly. Because even if you got a good tenant in there, if they're letting a drip go unnoticed, if there's some sort of problems with the plumbing, if there's any kind of foundational problems with the property, that can turn into a massive headache and a massive expense for you very, very quickly if you don't nip it in the bud. So you got to make sure that you're managing not only the tenant, but the property itself. Now, last but definitely not least, when it comes to making money with property rentals, is all about scale. There's only so much you can do with 1 or 2 rental properties in your portfolio. That's probably not going to replace your job income. That's probably not going to make a huge difference on your retirement income. So in order to really maximize the benefits of owning rental properties, you need to scale your portfolio. So how do you do that? Chances are, if you're trying to self-finance all your properties, you're going to run out of cash and credit. You're going to hit that wall and you're going to get stuck. You're going to stall out. So what do you need to do? You need to start thinking about bringing on joint venture partners and investors, starting to tap into other people's money. And here's the good news. It's not that difficult. There are literally trillions of dollars out there looking for a good investment home. All you need to do is show the right people what you're up to with real estate investing and get them engaged and get them enrolled as investor partners with you. It's a real win-win situation. You're able to grow your portfolio, and at the same time, you're able to help somebody who cannot or will not do this on their own get all of the benefits of investing in real estate without any of the hassles or the headaches of doing it themselves. So really start thinking about, how do I bring on joint venture partners? One big tip I've got for you about that is focus on your existing network first. Focus on people that you have a pre-existing relationship with. It's the fastest, safest, and easiest capital you're ever going to raise. So focus on friends, family members, coworkers, and business associates. Create a list of those folks, and then you can see from some of my previous videos how to break the ice with them and get that conversation going. Now, one of my favorite examples of how to make money with real estate rentals is one of our clients. Her name is July. And July, when I first met her, was just getting started with real estate investing. I think she had a little condominium that she'd self-financed, or she had one investor with. And then over the course of the next 10 years, July took massive action. And she ended up building up a portfolio of over 500 rental units. And she did all of those deals. She went from that little single condominium, then she got into a duplex and a triplex and a fiveplex. She ended up, I think her biggest property had over 100 rental units in it, for a total portfolio of over 500 rental units, all done with investor partners. By the time she built that portfolio up, in fact, in her first year and a half, she became a millionaire. Over the next couple of years, she became a multimillionaire. When she finally cashed out after 10 years, her net worth is outstanding. You can do the same thing. It's all about building up your portfolio of rental properties. All right, speaking of building up a rental portfolio with no money, using other people's money, if you'd like to find out how to attract investors and raise capital just like July did, then go ahead, get a free copy of my book, Money Partner Formula. This is my exact process for identifying, targeting, and attracting your perfect investors so that you can buy as many rental properties as you want. Go ahead, click on the link in the description below, or you can go to investorattractionbook.com. Get your copy today.